Peter, and putting in kind of your
Yeah.
court, what are gift and estate taxes, and what is the gift exemption?
Yeah. So the federal government taxes wealth transfers, and it does so in two ways. So first, it taxes gifts, lifetime gifts, and then it also taxes net worth at death. So essentially, a tax on bequests that you leave other people when you die. And so both taxes are basically part of a single integrated gift and estate tax system. So both apply at 40%. So 40% of the gift or 40% of the estate size. The important thing is that both have basically they use a single exemption amount, which exempts most people from having to pay either gift tax or estate tax. And so until 2017, the estate and gift tax exemption was back then it was about $5.5 million, and it was doubled by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was enacted in December 2017, and so effective January 2018. And so the exemption went from $5.5 million to about $11 million in 2018. And since then, it's increased with inflation. So it's now up to 13.61 million, and it'll be about 14 million in 2025. So that's 14 million per individual. So 28 million for a married couple. But when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, most of the provisions were temporary, including this one. And so under current law, at the end of 2025, midnight, December 31st, 2025, the exemption is going to be cut in half from what it would otherwise be with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So unless Congress extends the current exemption level, it'll go from about 14 million in 2025 to about 7 million in 2026, which is a huge drop. It's the biggest drop of the exemption amount in history. And if it happens, it'll more than double the amount of people who are subject to the estate tax. So it'll be a pretty big change.
And just to kind of, I know that's a lot there. So, and just to kind of practically break this down for folks, of what this means is, if you're planning to give more than $7 million as an individual to future generations, this likely applies to you. Because to kind of what Peter's calling out is, currently as an individual, you can give $14 million before you face this gift and estate tax. Beyond that 14 million, you lose 40% of it to federal tax. One other piece to add on there is that 40% is just the federal estate tax. There's also some states that have their own state estate taxes. And so that estate tax can rise to over 50%. And what that practically means is, today's world, you can give 14 million before you can potentially lose half of every incremental dollar you give. But in 2026, you can give 7 million before you start to lose 50%, potentially up to 50%. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, that's right. So basically, lowering the exemption does two things. One, it significantly increases the number of people who have this huge tax problem. The other thing it does is, for the people who are already over the exemption amount, the $14 million exemption amount, it limits. It makes it a lot harder for them to get assets out of their states. So it's a very significant change if it comes to pass.
Yeah, and just as kind of a practical piece of this is, let's say you haven't given anything. Let's say you're even just giving $14 million, and you don't do anything before 2026. Like, what's the rough kind of upfront impact of this and kind of potential impact over time?
Yeah.
If you miss this window.
Yeah. So the impact is huge, and there's a few different ways of thinking about it, quantifying it. So sort of the simplest calculation is to take the difference between the 2025 exemption amount and what the 2026 exemption amount would be. So that's about a $7 million delta. And if you multiply that
just to clarify, that means 2025, December 30th, 2025, you can gift $14 million to your kid, no estate tax. January 1st, after the ball has dropped, you can give 7 million, and that next 7 million would face at least that 40% tax, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so depending on what state you live in, if you just multiply that by your state tax rate, that 7 million by your state tax rate, it's somewhere close to $3 million. But that's actually really understating the real value of this. For people who are going to be over the exemption, it's actually worth a lot more than 3 million for a few reasons. One is, and I don't want to get into this too much, but when you make a gift, you can get a valuation discount a lot of the times on the gift. So if you gift a 50% interest in a $20 million real estate project, that's not a $10 million gift as far as the gift tax is concerned. It's more like a $6 or $7 million gift. And so the $7 million delta is actually, it can actually shelter a lot more than $7 million of gifts. It can probably cover, $10 or $11 million worth of gifting. And then if you factor in state-to-state taxes, like Monty alluded to, the number becomes bigger. If you factor in the generation skipping transfer tax, the number becomes bigger still. And then if you factor in appreciation that would occur outside of the estate over the course of the remainder of the taxpayer's lifetime, the numbers become really, really enormous depending on how long they live.
Yeah, and we'll jump into those numbers. And just the one piece I want to call out is really this is applicable, and just to be straightforward, this is really applicable to if you're ultra high net worth and you're going to, as an individual, gift more than $7 million to your kids, whether it's now or you expect to over the course of your life. This is really who this is applicable to. And that's where this is relevant.